Okay. So September marks National Suicide Prevention Month, and today's presentation will discuss some of the warning signs of suicide and steps you can take to help a loved one or someone in the community. Our topic today is suicide awareness, how to check in with a friend. And today's presenter is Dr. Lisa Moser. So Dr. Moser, take it away.
All right, well, thank you, Tracy. I do want to start off, though, by saying that this topic can be a very difficult topic for a lot of people. So I do want to just acknowledge that and let you know that if you do feel like you may need to do a debrief or would like to talk to somebody afterwards, please feel free to reach out to the EAP number. You can just talk to a counselor that picks up the phone. You don't have to get set up with services or anything like that. You can just talk about anything that may have been triggered, or I can stay on afterwards as well. But just keep in mind that if you have had a friend or a family member who has attempted suicide or died by suicide, this can be a tough talk, as well as if you yourself might struggle. So I just want to be aware of that. I do want to start off, though, by playing a video. I do believe that this video is very powerful, and that is why I would like to be able to play it. So we'll get started.
When I was a child, I always felt as if I was different. In high school, I did come out of my shell a bit, but with that came the partying and the alcohol struggle. Episodes of mania, depression. Going off to college was not the right thing. I went to a party one night, and I just remember feeling there's no point in going further, in living anymore. And that night I decided that I was going to take my life. When I got the impulse, I acted on it. When I got home, I told no one. I picked up some jobs, and I got a job in a bank. I did meet my wife, and we had a couple of boys. The self-esteem started to rise, and the confidence started to go up, and we had a life together. As I moved forward and got older, and my children got older, these episodes started to intensify again, and they were getting worse. The depressions were lower, the mania was higher, and that brought on the alcohol and the drug use. That's when I was first diagnosed that I was living with bipolar disorder. My brain wasn't thinking straight, wasn't thinking correctly. It was like there was a voice telling me my life, and all of it was bad. None of it mattered, and it was lying to me. But I believed whatever it told me. And so I planned my attempt. I thought the plan I had was foolproof and would work. It didn't. When I was in the hospital receiving treatment, I woke up and looked at myself pretty hard and said, "It's enough. You can't do this to yourself. Can't live this way anymore." That was the moment I realized that I needed to start on a path to recovery. I had to stop drinking, and I had to stop taking drugs. Another key thing for me was embracing professional help. As far as tools I was given, it started with running. From running, I found yoga. I met a group of people that embraced me and would support me. And I, in turn, supported them. I think recovery is complex, and there is no one answer for everyone. Find what works for you. Recovery is attainable, and recovery happens. And I'm living proof.
Okay, so I really felt that that was a very powerful video, so I wanted to take the time to show that to you all today. I hope that you got something out of it as well. But that being said, I'm going to move on. So I did want to start off by showing some data in the state of Florida. Um, in the state of Florida, suicide is the 9th leading cause of death. Now, the good news about that is that we used to be the 7th, so we've moved up 2, which is positive. The bad news is it's still one of the top 10. And if you look further down, you'll see that it is the third leading cause of death for children or people age 15 to 24, and the second from age 25 to 34. So it's still pretty significant. And then over to the one side, what I really think is important that we note is that 65% of firearm deaths were suicide. So when we look at the use of firearms and the increased use of guns and firearms in today's world, that is concerning to me. And 58% of all suicides were also by firearms. And when people use firearms, there's a much higher chance that the suicide attempt is going to be successful. So I want to go over some terms. Suicidal ideation is when a person does have thoughts of suicide, doesn't necessarily think that they're going to follow through on them. It just means that they're having those thoughts. Suicidal gestures are individuals who might self-harm, but their intent is not to end their life. So that might be people who cut or bang their heads, and you may have heard about some of that. And usually the purpose of that is to kind of take that focus from the emotional onto something more physical, more tangible to them. So it helps. It's not a very productive coping skill, but it is a coping skill that people do try to use. And then finally, suicidal attempts are a person self-harm with the intent to end their life. So why would people complete suicide? So I want to point out that it's really important to keep in mind, especially if you've had somebody close to you attempt or complete suicide, that it's never one reason. It's never something that you said, something you did, something that you didn't say, or something that you didn't notice. When someone attempts or completes suicide, it's for a huge gamut of reasons. But what it comes down to is that this person just really feels that there's no way out of the pain that they're experiencing. So it is a belief that ending one's life is the best possible solution to ending pain. Usually it's emotional pain, but it can also be physical pain as well. A person who does complete suicide is often suffering from severe depression, although that's not always the case. It can be an impulsive act, as the man in the video talked about his use of alcohol and drugs. It is very common for someone to be more likely to attempt suicide while under the influence. I want to say that percentage is somewhere around 23, 24, 25% of suicides are while someone is under the influence of some alcohol or drug, in most cases alcohol. Usually when a person completes suicide or attempts suicide, they just have this sense of unbearable pain. They cannot find a way out. They don't see any other options. They might be experiencing some intense disappointment or frustration. But the big key word here is hopelessness. And that is that a person feels so hopeless and so helpless to make that change or to help that change. Now, some people do attempt suicide because they're hearing voices and the voices are telling them to do it. And finally, sometimes people don't really mean to do it. Maybe they're trying to cry out for help, or they're trying to release some kind of stress or emotional tension, and they mistakenly complete the suicide. As we said, it's not uncommon for someone to experience depression when they are thinking about suicide. What we often see there is, sad mood, change in eating habits, a difficulty getting out of bed, maybe some sadness, a social withdrawal, and often a change in weight or appearance. So they stop taking care of themselves, those types of things. What we don't see are the other things on the screens, and that's what's going on inside a person, like having these thoughts, feeling worthless, feeling misunderstood, having difficulty concentrating. So all of these things you see on the screen might be what's going on internally for an individual. So what are some warning signs? Well, a big warning sign is if somebody is talking about wanting to die, or they're having so much guilt or shame that they can't do anything with that. Or another big one is talking about being a burden to others. It's not uncommon for you to hear this with the elderly population. Now, I will tell you that the elderly population now are less likely to attempt suicide because they have strong beliefs, could be spiritual beliefs or family beliefs. And the percentage of suicide in the 65 and older is much lower than the younger percentage, but it doesn't mean that we don't see it. But we often do hear that age range talking about not wanting to be a burden to others. Some of the feelings that people will talk about or discuss might be feeling empty. Hopelessness is a big one, as I said earlier, feeling trapped or feeling like they have no reason to live. Just being very sad, anxious, anxiety can be a huge part of it, agitated, or just full of anger. But it comes down to that same thing we talked about earlier, and that's that unbearable emotional or physical pain that a person does not see a way out of. You might notice some changes in behavior, such as, withdrawing from others or having big mood swings. One sure sign is if you ever walk in on somebody who's on the computer researching a plan or ways to die, especially without pain, that's a big one. Eating or sleeping less, and of course, the increase in drug or alcohol use. So what do we do if we think someone is possibly thinking about suicide? We really want to take these comments and threats seriously. We don't want to just discount them. We want to be able to ask direct questions. And a lot of times people don't feel comfortable with asking the direct question because they don't know what they'll do with the answer. And we're going to talk about that today. If you do ask those direct questions, and I highly recommend that you do, and a person does say yes, then we'll talk about what to do from there. We do want to answer their cries for help, because if a person is talking about it, usually means that there's a part of them that does want the help, and we want to be able to do that. And it's not expected that those of you on this call would know how to handle that. You're not mental health professionals. So what we want to do is put them in the hands of a professional that could help them with those thoughts and their coping and healing. So how do we talk to someone who is expressing these types of thoughts? Okay. So, talking about suicide is often the first step to getting someone help. So if somebody actually mentions that, yes, I'm struggling with these thoughts, then it's very important that we, number one, take that seriously, and that we then proceed to have that conversation with that individual and connect them with someone who can help them. So we want to let them know that we're concerned, and it's just as easy to say, I am very concerned when I hear you make those kinds of statements. Let's talk about what we can do to get you some help. It's important that we not express a negative judgment, that even though we may not agree with suicide or think it's an answer, that right now that person is thinking that it's an answer. And when we discount that, we discount their feelings. So we want to be very careful not to do that. And the next one is one of those cases where it's important that we fake it, even if we don't feel it. And that is just appearing confident and reassuring. Okay, maybe inside we're scared for them. Maybe we're not sure what to do to help them. But if we say, okay, I hear what you're saying, let's get you some help. Um, there is a way out of this. There is hope for you. Let's talk about what you need to do next. So just appearing confident in that really can help that individual feel confident that there can be a change in how they feel in the future. And again, asking the question without dread. We don't oftentimes want to hear that answer, right? But it's very important that we ask the question. And I ask it very directly by saying, are you having thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself or wanting to die? And those are the questions that I ask. Somebody can have what's called passive thoughts of suicide, and that doesn't mean that they're trying to end their life or they want to hurt themselves. It just means that those thoughts are in their head, but they have no intention to follow through on them and they have no plan to follow through. But that again is somebody that we need to connect with some help as well. And we do want to discuss anything that we might be observing. So if we are noticing that somebody is withdrawing from others or having a hard time getting out of bed or just seems very down, we want to be able to say, hey, I noticed that these types of behaviors, let's talk about what we can do to help you. And the two other risks that we talked about earlier was very, very important. Well, one risk we talked about, and that is, are they using drugs or alcohol? Because that does increase the risk. And another huge increase in risk is if they had made a suicide attempt in the past. So if somebody has made one attempt in the past, there's a higher chance that they could do it again. Now, another one that's not up on the screen is if an individual has had a close friend or family member attempt or die by suicide. That is also a huge risk factor. So what are some of the questions? We want to be very direct. Are you having thoughts of wanting to end your life or hurt yourself? Or I often say, or, do you wish you were dead? Or do you have thoughts of wanting to die? Because those all are indications that a person could be going down that path. And then the next question might be, if they answer yes to those questions, how would you hurt yourself if you were going to do it, and have you decided when you would do it? Because sometimes when people do make these plans, they do set a specific date. That's not always the case, but it is sometimes. So we want to make sure we ask those questions. And then a big one is, do you have access to whatever means? So if a person tells you, yes, I'm thinking about overdosing, then of course most of us have Tylenol in the house, most of us have Advil, and they can be lethal. So we want to see if they have access to that, which I'm assuming they would, and then take steps from there. If they say by gun, we do want to ask if they have guns in the home, and those are some very important questions. So what do we do to help that person? We want to be able to talk openly and almost matter of factly about how they're feeling, because we don't want it to seem alarming to them. We want to listen to what they have to say, allow them to talk about their feelings. What's very important is that we get them help from experts, from the behavioral health experts, that we offer hope that alternatives are available. Maybe a person tells you, I remember when I was in the hospital one time and I talked to a person on the medical floor who had attempted suicide, and I had said to him, what was your main thought? Like, what was going on? And he said, I don't want to be homeless. And so my next conversation with him was about, hey, there's places out there for you. There are possibilities for housing for you. So there is an alternative here. And then we want to take action. If somebody does have weapons or pills in the home, we want to remove them if there's any way we can, or we can ask them to remove them and give them to someone. Those are some of the things that we can do to guarantee that they're not going to have easy access. And another big one that I like to talk about are protective factors. And protective factors are reasons why we would not hurt ourselves. So if we ask an individual, what are some reasons why you would not want to hurt yourself? and they say, well, my family needs me, or my child needs me, or my spouse, or my animal. You know, pets are very important to people. So no, there would be no one to take care of my pet. So it's important that we then have a conversation about those things, because then it brings up the importance of them in that individual's life. So if a person says, you know, I don't want to hurt myself because I'm worried about how that would impact my daughter, then, you know, tell me about your daughter. And you'll get them like focused on their daughter and how important she is to them and what great qualities she has. And then you can move into, um, you know, it would be very important for her that you be in her life as she grows up and goes through these things, and, you know, kind of move down that path while you're trying to get help for the individual. We don't want to debate with a person whether it's the right or wrong thing to do, regardless of how we feel about it or whether it's a bad thing. We don't want to lecture anybody on the value of life. We can find ways to have them understand that through talking about those protective factors. If we act shocked or fearful or anxious, then we can increase that individual's anxiety. And we don't ever want to promise that we won't tell anybody, because if a person is at risk for hurting themselves, we do want to make sure that we keep them safe, even if they're going to be angry at us for a short while. Something we can do if we are worried about an individual that maybe we're not with that person, but we've been trying to call them and we can't reach them, and we tried over and over again, and we keep thinking about something that they may have said to us that brings some concern. We can do what's called a wellness check. And what that is when we call the non-emergency line for the local police, and we ask them to go out to the home and check to make sure that that individual is okay. We will need to know what they, and tell them, disclose to them what they had said to us to create that concern, um, because they'll need that information. We also need to know the address, obviously, and the name and relevant details so that they have the ability to go out there. When that happens, they do just go out, knock on the door and say, you know, are you so-and-so? We're worried your so-and-so was trying to reach you. They were unable to, and they were worried. And then we want to stay in communication with that individual as needed. And the police will call you back if you do call one in oftentimes, and let you know that that person is okay once they've checked on them. Another huge benefit and possibility out there is the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And if anybody does want to post this up, you can certainly go on their website. They have all kinds of printable posters. I think we even have some that we could maybe hand out. We don't have a ton, but we have some. The 988 Crisis Line is just an amazing resource for people. You can call this line any time of the day, and it's answered by a person who's trained to assess a person's level of suicide, and they can determine whether they need to send someone out immediately to keep that individual safe, or whether they just need to connect them with services so they can handhold from there. If you're with a friend and you are worried about them, you can actually take their phone, dial 988, get them on the line, and hand the phone back to them so that they can talk to that individual. You can stay there with them. If you are highly concerned about an individual and you feel that their safety is in jeopardy in the moment, please call 911 and report it right away so that someone gets there to keep that person safe, because that's the most important part here. And I know sometimes we might be worried that somebody might be angry with us, but in the end, they'll be thankful once they get through this crisis. There is another possibility. There are mobile crisis teams in almost every county. You can Google them, and you can call them and you can tell them about your concern, whether it's about yourself or someone else, and they can send someone out to talk with you and to determine what next steps would be. What could somebody want who might have these thoughts? They might just want someone to listen. They might want someone to trust and someone to care. So it may not necessarily mean that they're going to follow through on anything, but that they just want someone to be there for them. Today is World Suicide Prevention Day. It is an important day. And certainly the right day for us to present this training today. So some advice would be to watch out for signs of distress or changes in behavior, which is very important. For example, maybe we have a colleague at work who normally comes into work on time and dressed appropriately and looks, ready for their day, and they start coming in late and they look disheveled or like they just woke up. That's a sure sign that something is going on. So we do want to check in with them. We do want to ask the questions. I don't use the word suicidal thoughts with people because not a lot of people know what that means or what could it mean. It could be anything from passive thoughts to, I want to hurt myself right now in the moment. And so that term is so broad that I try to stay away from it. And instead I ask the question, are you having thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself or wanting to die? And then that opens up the avenue of further discussion. Um, we do want to, you know, uh, kind of assure people that things do get better. Although discounting them and saying, "Oh, you're going to be fine," is not the answer. But just knowing that there will be a time in the future when you will feel differently. And then talking is one of the most important things that we can encourage an individual to do when they're having these thoughts. And that's, talk to each other, talk to you, but most importantly, talk to a qualified health professional, somebody who can help them get where they need to be, get the help they need, whether it's inpatient or outpatient, but to definitely get that help. This is just a website I like to put out there for people. Healing Conversations is a one-time visit. It can be phone, virtual, or in person that connects those who have lost a loved one to suicide with trained volunteers who have also been through the same thing. So the goal of this connection is to help survivors navigate this journey because it is hard if you have had someone close to you die by suicide. Sometimes it can be very hard to cope. So I did want to put this up there for you all. There's an email address and there's also a website. So you can you can go into the website and look that up. Okay, I'll leave that up for a second. I'm now going to move into any kind of questions or comments that anyone might have. I'd love to be able to answer them. So I do believe that maybe Tracy will end the video so